Politico out with a new smear piece against progressives, this time going after Our Revolution and the head, Nina Turner. Now, let's get into what they're saying. First, they talk about how Our Revolution is basically falling apart. They're not backing any candidates, and when they actually do back candidates, well, they end up losing. They write, quote, "Our revolution has frustrated Democrats by staying on the sidelines of so many races. For example, they point to Ralph Northam's 2017 general election campaign." Now, Northam, of course, was an establishment, centrist, kind of milquetoast candidate. So it kind of makes sense that Our Revolution, who is based on Bernie Sanders type backed candidates, and Bernie Sanders type candidates, well, it would make sense if they supported them and not the establishment candidate. So that's kind of a nonsensical point. But nonetheless, they go to Virginia Democratic Party chairwoman, Susan Swecker, who criticizes them. She says that campaign was, to, quote, "the World Series of politics." And they chose not to go to the game. Well, I just told you why they didn't go to the game. Because they weren't actually on the same team. They didn't have somebody who was progressive running in the race. Again, they had Ralph Northam, who was a centrist Democrat. Not something that Our Revolution tends to endorse. But they get into other races where there are some progressives that have other Bernie Sanders inspired ideals. Well, they didn't support those guys either. They must be a mess. They must be a complete wreck. Well, there are a lot of races where there's more than one progressive. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 progressives. And that's what happens in a primary. And you know what? The progressives will battle each other out to see who is the most viable candidate. And sometimes Our Revolution will decide not to get involved in those races simply because, hey man, we're going to let you battle it out. We don't want to pick favorites in this. You go ahead and do your thing. Fair enough, right? But no. According to this article, or according to Politico, well, Our Revolution, losers, they're falling apart. They're not doing anything. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Now, they continue writing that it's left the group without tangible successes or to point to allies in power who will be able to help it or Bernie Sanders down the line. So, okay, for one, Bernie Sanders this is an inspired group. This is not actually a Bernie Sanders group. You understand? He's not actually connected to it. He's not actually funding it. Nothing like that. This is not his group. So already they're tying it to Bernie Sanders and saying, look at that. See what they can't point it to any wins or successes that's going to help Bernie Sanders down the line. You see that? It's a complete failure. And it's because of Bernie Sanders. Actually, they're also going to point to somebody else as a reason behind all these failings. But first, in other races where it has endorsed, they write, including for Ohio governor and Illinois governor, Our Revolution's preferred candidates have lost. Sad. So, look, Ohio... in the Ohio race, Dennis Kucinich was backed by Our Revolution. Dennis Kucinich did not win. In fact, it was kind of a blowout. He got about 23% of the vote, despite being backed by Our Revolution. So, hey man, look, when it comes to politics, you win some, you lose some. You run good campaigns, or, you run a campaign. That doesn't guarantee that you're going to win. And you get an endorsement from a group, that doesn't mean you're going to win. That's politics, that's life. But again, they're pointing at these 2 examples of, well, it's because of this group's mismanagement. That's why they keep losing. Or they have poor judgment. Well, look, as I said before, you win some, you lose some, right? Now, here's where this, of course, turns into a big hit piece, where they claim, essentially, that most of the losses of Our Revolution, Our Revolution has not won anything. Well, that's not true. In the races, in about half of them, where Our Revolution was involved, there's actually was a win. the Our Revolution-backed candidate won. Now, the organization, aside from just pushing candidates, because that's not the only thing that they do, they actually try to spur grassroots progressive action. They facilitated over 11,000 grassroots events and endorsed about 175 candidates, and they've passed about 24 different ballot initiatives. So not only are they putting up candidates, which again, that's what the Democratic Party does. They're like, oh, that's all we do. We put up candidates. But do you do any grassroots stuff? Do you push ballot measures? Do you coordinate events? No. Our revolution does all of that. So I'm sorry if they're not laser focused on getting people elected and then going, okay, on to the next one. That somehow translates into being a loser in your book. Okay, wonderful. Now, you continue. One of the early warning signs came in the Virginia's governor's race. Last year, marquee election, Our Revolution endorsed former Representative Tom Perriello in the Democratic primary and offered to send 2 fundraising emails on behalf of using Sanders' massive email list. Now, they call this the vaunted email list that the Democratic Party wants. And look, they do want it. Bernie Sanders has said, no, we're not going to give over that list. Why? Because it's not going to be useful to you. If if we hand it over to Hillary Clinton or we hand it over to the DNC, most of the people on that list are not going to give you money because they're fundamentally opposed to what the DNC has actually done and will only contribute to progressive candidates. And that would, of course, be a complete sellout. Like if Bernie Sanders gives over his list for nothing, then a lot of people would lose faith in Bernie Sanders, myself included. I'd be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to give your list to those guys? What the hell? So he's like, no, of course not. I'm not going to give that list. I'm actually going to give it to Our Revolution. We're going to give them access to it. Now, they said, quote, officials assured the campaign the emails would net between $150,000 to $300,000, according to 2 Perriello aides. However, weeks went by before the emails were sent, and when they were, the total combined haul was about $50,000. Well, that's a lot less than what they had expected, right? I mean, $150,000 to $300,000, and actually getting about $50,000 was not a lot of money. So they further will go and point out in this article, well, that's, of course, because Our Revolution is absolutely failing, and it's got poor leadership, and it's not getting involved in all this, these different elections, and they have no coherent structure, and it's just it's crashing and failing. It's crashing and burning with an E. Well, let me give you something to counter that. Well, for one, fundraising for the DNC, fundraising for the DCCC has actually also been hilariously low. And there's a reason for that. Now, most people, instead of contributing to these big organizations, are actually contributing to the candidates themselves through small dollar donations, $27 at a time. So now, of course, you could talk to Democrats in these organizations, like how much money can you raise? Can you raise a lot of money through these organizations and PACs? And if you can't, well, then your movement is failing. But that's not true. A lot of these candidates, as I said, are raising money through small dollar donations, individual Act Blue accounts, all that stuff. So that's how more and more people, especially progressives, are choosing to support their candidates instead of giving it to an organization, which sometimes can have little accountability, as evidenced with the DNC. Now, furthermore, Our Revolution does not take money from wealthy donors. So at the end of the day, they're not going to raise quite as much. And there are people that are turned off, that are disillusioned, that have given, that were part of the the Sanders email list, that no matter what, they're not going to give money. Because they think, well, what's it matter? Who's it going to? What's going to happen with it? Is it going to get, go to somebody that I don't agree with, etc.? So there's significant actual concerns, right? Now, here's where they go from critiquing the organization for not supporting every single Democrat, which they never said they were going to do, and besides, which isn't really feasible for such a young organization, to now smearing the head of that organization. They said most of what our revolution has become known for in campaigns is an active and often combative Twitter account. Both fans and detractors of Sanders, which is weird, I haven't really seen a lot of fans, but please go on, pin our revolution's problems on Nina Turner, the former Ohio State Senator who became the group's president and public face 1 year ago. So, you see that? It's all Nina Turner's fault. She's taking this organization. She's running into the ground. Really? Oh, that's fascinating. Now, they continue, though some sources involved in our revolution say she's been an effective spokesperson, several others told Politico that they think she's seeking to increase her profile and collect chits to run for president herself as leader of the Sanders movement if the 76-year-old senator ultimately sits out 2020. Oh, so look at this. She might use this. She might be running for president. So, wait, are you saying that a politician can't have political ambition? But what is it that your guys do in the DNC? They all have political ambition. They're politics. They're politicians. It's politics. But anyway, but they're saying that she is mismanaging and not leading the organization at all, and actually just using it as a way to what, get her name recognition out there. Anybody who's ever listened to Nina Turner speak is usually blown away by it. I am, personally. I heard her speak. I was like, holy shit, who is this person? That's awesome. So I enjoyed listening to her speak. I've seen her speak in person. She's incredible. So I think it would be pretty difficult for her to not be able to get some sort of recognition, name recognition, just from her speeches alone. So I don't understand why anybody would think that she would need an organization, Our Revolution, to boost her name recognition. But that's just me, right? But anyway, that piece in Politico goes on to a length to try to give the impression that Turner is using this Our Revolution to boost her own profile, which is funny coming from the author of this piece, who has criticized on day one Our Revolution. But I'll get to that in a minute. Now, they also went after the endorsement process, which is, again, very, very interesting, considering how the National Party does their endorsements, about who gets most money and who can raise the most money and whatever. And again, they go after Our Revolution for not getting involved in some of these races, which had no business having Our Revolution involved when there wasn't a progressive candidate. But yes, even they point out a couple where there was a couple of progressive candidates. Hey, look, not every progressive will get an endorsement from Our Revolution. Sometimes that happens. Oh well. But anyway, look, here's the thing. Here's what this entire thing is about. This is a hatchet job. This is a hit job. This is a smear job, okay, against progressives and against a pretty good progressive organization. Now, is the organization perfect? Of course not. But here it is. Here's this guy saying, look, Sanders, he's going to get hurt by this organization that's flailing, it's falling apart. No, he's not. He's still the most popular politician in America, and he's one of the people that embodies some of the best policies that we have seen come out of the Democratic Party. Because he's the one who's pushing them. And he wants to get the rest of the Democratic Party to be able to embrace Medicare for all, a $15 living wage, free college, regulations in the banks, and breaking up too big to fail banks. If they're too big to fail, they're too big to exist. Most Americans agree with that stuff. So, but nonetheless, they're trying to pin this on Bernie Sanders in an effort to try to, get people to disqualify him. I don't know. But anyway, now let me tell you a little bit about the author of the piece. His name is Edward Isaac de Vere. Now, he is somebody who is on Politico. He has been writing for the company for quite some time. He hosts a Off Message podcast, and he's also a huge Sanders critic. Now, look, you can be critical of Bernie Sanders. I've been critical of Bernie Sanders. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have some valid criticisms. No person is perfect, right? But he's a guy who's been writing anti-Sanders hit jobs since 2016. And a lot of the stuff that he mentions in his article, by the way, just show an organization that's going through a few growing pains. That's all. And yes, this is normal for an organization that's 2 years old. I mean, look at them compared to an organization that's 150 years old. The Democratic Party. So, look, when you have a 40 to 50% win rate on your candidates, and you're organizing and you're sending millions of text messages to people, and you're getting them organized and you're doing grassroots events, I would say for all the problems that our revolution has, they're actually pretty successful. Now, if you want to point them out and say, hey, man, look, yeah, they're not a perfect organization, and there's some issues and there's some questions here and there, that's fair. But again, this is a hit job from the establishment. So, now let me get you into why. Now, why here, why now, right? And the catalyst, of course, is the New York mayoral race. New York governor's race between Cynthia Nixon and Andrew Cuomo. Cynthia Nixon just got endorsed by our revolution. Oh, very interesting. Now, last week, he writes, our revolution endorsed actress Cynthia Nixon in the primary for New York governor after she filled out a questionnaire and did an interview with a local affiliate. But an aide to her opponent, Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo, who last year was joined by Sanders at an event promoting a state initiative on the senator's signature issue of free college, said his campaign knew nothing of the process and learned of the endorsement simply from a press release. Oh, that's what this is about. How dare you endorse Cynthia Nixon when our boy Cuomo was hanging out with your boy Sanders? How dare he put the knife in the back of Cuomo when he adopted one of your policies? But actually, and we've talked about this, that policy had a lot of strings attached. So it was kind of a quasi-free college program. Yeah, it's a little bit, and this is indicative of what the establishment is doing. It's a little bit of positive change, but also not really. So it always comes with a host of preconditions and things that you can qualify for and a lot of incrementalism. But it's being sold as progressive policy, super progressive policy, which in reality it's not. So it is, of course, an inch forward, as the establishment loves to do. But look, in response to our revolution not endorsing Cuomo, which would be insane, because Cuomo is, of course, an establishment candidate, they said, oh my God, how dare you? Beltway media, attack our revolution. Edward, you love doing hit jobs against Bernie Sanders and our revolution. Go get him. Go get him. That's all this is. So, but even with all that, there is some good news here. And that is when the establishment goes on the attack like this, you know that you're making an impact. You know that you're winning. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.